Hello and welcome to Runkle of the Bailey. My name is Ian Runkle. I'm a Canadian criminal defense and firearms lawyer. Recently, a lawyer by the name of Akiva M. Cohen sent a demand letter to Elon Musk on behalf of several people who were former employees of Twitter requesting, well, we're going to go through the letter, so we'll see everything that they were requesting. This letter has been getting a lot of attention online because it is written in spicy and fiery fashion, and also because the lawyer who wrote it posted it to Twitter. So there was some intention to gain this kind of interest. Now you might be wondering, what is a demand letter? Well, a demand letter is something you might send, and there's usually no requirement to do so, but you send it off to the other side to basically say, hey, listen, we are thinking of suing you. Here is why we're thinking of suing you. Here's why we think we're going to win. And here's what we want. And the reason why you'd typically send one of these things is that you might want to avoid litigation. And sometimes if you send a demand letter, the other side will just give you what you want. And that's usually a happier outcome. You know, if somebody steals your car and you find out who they are and you send them a demand letter saying, hey, my car was worth $5,000, pay me the money or I will sue you. If they pay you the $5,000, that's a happy outcome. So that's kind of the idea. It's sort of an opening to negotiations, to discussions, that kind of thing. Now, there's some things that go into sort of a good demand letter, and these are typical things. One of them is that typically you don't want to piss the other side off. And the reason why is that you're trying to negotiate, right? This is the opening of a dialogue. And if you get the other side's back up, typically that's going to mean that they're not going to give you what you want, possibly out of, pique. And then that's not ideal. Another thing is you want to usually, you want to lay out why the other side is going to lose, and you want to do that in a way that hopefully should make them a little nervous. So the proper the response you're hoping to get isn't one of anger, it's one of kind of uncertainty or doubt or dread or fear, as opposed to somebody who wants to fight you. You also want to lay out what you want and why you think the court's going to give it to you, or at least a persuasive argument for why a court might give it to you. So this is to motivate the other side to give you those things, because if they think the court is going to do that anyway, maybe they'll just hurry up and do it. So let's have a look at this letter just to see what it does, because this one's a bit of an unusual demand letter. So we'll just bring this up here. Now it starts off with Elon, Alex. This is a very unusual way of beginning a demand letter. Typically, these letters are written in very formal fashion. And so typically you would say, Mr. Musk, Mr. Spiro, that kind of thing. It's very unusual. I don't typically see them referring to people by their first names in these things. Anyway, it continues on. I'm a partner at Kammerman, Unsick, I think, Sonaker, and Klein, counsel to many of the employees you recently laid off from Twitter Incorporated, Twitter. And I'm sure you've been expecting this. This is a really casual way of phrasing it, but okay. Ever since you took over Twitter, you've been attempting to tap dance your way out of Twitter's binding obligations to its employees, which include paying the agreed severance to the thousands of people you laid off just in time for the holidays. If basic human decency and honor isn't enough to make you want to keep your word, maybe this will. Now, okay, this normally isn't how you'd write a demand letter, because this is clearly punchy. This is clearly somebody, you're leading off with an insult here. That's not typically what you want to do. And especially now that it's been posted publicly, I mean, this is a public slap in the face, which kind of suggests that the goal here might not be a speedy resolution. So let's keep going here. So it says, if you don't unequivocally confirm by Wednesday, December 7th, which is just a few days away, that you intend to provide our clients with the full severance Twitter promised them, we will commence an arbitration campaign on their behalf, with each employee filing a separate individual arbitration as required by the terms of your arbitration agreement. Now, this is where things get fun from, sort of a legal perspective. Companies love arbitration agreements, and they love them because basically, in most cases, the arbitration company tends to side with the company. And, it tends to be a way to force, to sort of push people into less ideal resolutions than they might have gotten through the courts. However, these arbitration agreements can be dangerous. And we'll keep reading here and I'll explain how they can be dangerous and how they're sort of using this against Twitter. So under both California law and the JAMS arbitration rules, Twitter will be responsible to pay the arbitration costs for each individual arbitrator and arbitration. Consistent with the terms of Twitter's arbitration agreement, those arbitrations will be held in jurisdictions across the country, no more than 45 miles from where each employee worked. Not only will you lose on the merits, but even if you somehow won, the victory would be Pyrrhic. There should have been a comma in there. Twitter will pay far more in attorney's fees and arbitration costs than it could possibly save in severance due our clients. So the way these things typically work is that the person with the grievance, so in this case the employee, would pay a fee, but then the actual arbitrator is paid for by the company. And you can see why there might be sort of a leaning in these arbitration things to favor the company, because the company's paying most of the bills. But you can see how these things can go really badly because, arbitration is expensive, but often it can save the company money because they're paying the arbitrator, but they don't have to pay out the eventual, as much in the end. However, if they're having to pay lots of arbitrators, that can add up in a real hurry. Especially if, as in this case, they might have to do it all over the place. Twitter is a big company. They probably have employees sort of spread out across the US. And this is going to be a bit of a problem because not only are they going to have to pay for the arbitrators, and they can't lump them all together, right? They can't say, let's hear everything together because it's got to be in all these different places across the country. This could get really expensive. And this is a tactic that isn't a new tactic that's being invented here. It's been used successfully before in other circumstances. But there's a lot of companies who are finding themselves regretting these kinds of arbitration agreements when they get hit by sort of mass arbitration requests. All right, let's keep going here. So, and to be clear, I'll just have to get that up here. And to be clear, Elon, you will lose, and you know it. As you know, in section 6.9 sub A of the agreement and plan of the merger between X Holdings 1 and 2 and Twitter, the merger agreement, you and Twitter each agreed to provide Twitter's continuing employees with severance payments and benefits no less favorable than those applicable to them immediately prior to the merger if they were terminated within a year from the date of the merger. Twitter then communicated that promise to each of its employees by email and in its acquisition FAQ, and detailed in writing what they could expect in severance if they stayed through the merger and were laid off. A minimum of 2 months of salary, accelerated vesting of their RSUs paid in cash at $54.20 a share, payment of their prorated bonuses, and continued contribution to their health care. Instead, the severance and benefits you've since offered in various iterations in your first communications to the laid-off employees and in your FAQ communications to employees who didn't click the button in your second round of layoffs falls far, far short of your promises. 1 month of salary, no bonus, no accelerated vest, and no contribution to healthcare. Okay, so they want basically a pile of money. Now, at this point, it's worth looking at the footnote here. So they note, we currently represent 22 and are in discussions with several hundred more who are still choosing among the various firms that have offered to represent them. So they've got 22 people, but they want several hundred more, and this is likely to be contingency agreements. So the more people they have, the more money this lawyer makes. we're going to have some thoughts on that as we go. Let's keep going. And I know you're going to argue that my clients aren't entitled to what you promised them for reasons that don't bear scrutiny. I mean, why would you put this into a demand letter? I mean, usually you want to say, here are the arguments you think, you'd want to have some section of this saying, here are the arguments you might think you'd, sort of marshal against me, and here's why they're not going to work. So we both know you're grasping at straws at this point. Again, the really kind of insulting, dismissive language here is unusual in a demand letter. You're going to point to section 6.9 sub E of the merger agreement and argue that it says that the employees aren't intended third-party beneficiaries and therefore can't enforce section 6.9 sub A of the merger agreement. But that would be a mistake for so many reasons. Delaware law doesn't treat those sorts of recitals as dispositive, and running through the three-factor test for third-party beneficiary status is going to factor my clients, not you. Twitter decided to include an arbitration clause in its employment agreements, and arbitration with JAMS specifically allows the arbitrator to award any relief that is just and equitable, and to be guided by the rules of law they deem most appropriate. Under the circumstances, coming in and arguing, yeah, I promised this, but lol, you can't make me actually do it, is unlikely to end well for Twitter. Lol? Really? Lol? Yeah, as I said, this is a very unusual demand letter. It's kind of interesting that they're sort of citing law from across the US, but I mean, maybe they've got clients from across the US and they're pointing to different rules in different places. All right, carrying on here. But even if that were somehow a viable strategy, you'd still lose. The doctrine of promissory estoppel means that Twitter can't promise its employees a severance package to get them to stay at the company through the merger, and then renege on that promise once they do. Your insistence on including that no third-party beneficiaries clause in section 6.9 sub E suggests that you were always planning on playing this game, so we'll be including a cause of action for fraud in our arbitration demands, and seeking punitive damages on top of pre- and post-judgment interest. Worse, we've received anecdotal information from our clients and others that indicates the layoff was conducted in violation of FEHA and other anti-discrimination laws. Please provide us by Wednesday the 7th with a demographic breakdown of the individuals Twitter laid off. So basically they're saying that there is a discriminatory element to it that they want to pursue in all of that. Last, we've received information from our clients that you have not been providing the employees you laid off on November 4th, 2022 with their full benefits, even though you placed them on months of non-working leave in an attempt to comply with the WARN Act. Clients are reporting that Twitter is not providing their 401k deductions and company matches, and that issues are arising as they attempt to take advantage of other company benefits. I'm sure I don't need to warn you that's a bad idea. Look, you have time to avoid all this. You can still choose to keep your word and Twitter's and pay your ex-employees what you owe them. For whatever it's worth to you, you should know that if you do, what you pay will actually flow to them, not us as their attorneys. We've agreed not to take any contingency fee if Twitter does what it agreed to do without requiring litigation. Or you can double down on breaking your word and screwing over your ex-employees as they head into the holidays. If so, deposing you will be a joy, and you should be aware that Washington law, among others that will apply, will allow us to obtain an award against you personally, and not just Twitter the company. And then they end this with, we're not holding our breath, but we hope you'll do what's right and keep your word. Either way, we'll be ready. If you'd like to reach me to discuss, you have my contact information. And then it's signed. So, there are some thoughts I have on this. As mentioned, this is very unusual because it seems to be picking a fight. You know, if you've seen Braveheart, there is a scene where the armies are sort of lined up on each side, and essentially they bring out the armies and then they negotiate something, and that's sort of the usual way business was done prior to, Wallace showing up. And he says, you know what? I'm going to go pick a fight. We're going to actually have a battle today. This is picking a fight because they want a battle. And that is interesting because this is revealing a bit of a conflict that I see between the lawyer and the clients. Now, as mentioned, there are 22 clients and several hundred more who are still choosing among the various firms to represent them. That's right here in the right here in that. So part of the purpose of this, thing and circulating it seems to be to try to recruit more of those clients, right? To try to get more interest. There's a marketing element to this. Now, that's not necessarily a conflict because that whole arbitration strategy works a lot better if you have a lot of people than if you have few people. I don't know if 22 is enough to make Elon Musk blink at this point. However, several hundred might be. It's hard to say. So, yeah, okay, maybe that's not the strongest, conflict aspect. But then we go down to this other bit where they noted here, for whatever it's worth to you, you should know that if you do, what you pay will actually flow to them, not us as their attorneys. We've agreed not to take any contingency fee if Twitter does what it agreed to do without requiring litigation. So, from the client's perspective, the best outcome here is that Elon Musk quietly pays the money, right? Because at that point, the client is doing great. The client gets their money. The law firm gets nothing, but the client doesn't care about the law firm. The client usually isn't going, hey, I really hope my lawyer can buy another boat. Yeah, the client's interests are not the lawyer's interests. But this is picking a fight, right? Elon Musk is unlikely to just go, oh yeah, no, I've got this, this really insulting letter and it's been a publicly insulting letter. Let's just roll over and, give in. So at that point, the clients might be missing out. They might be facing now the contingency aspects are getting triggered. And a contingency, in case people are sort of unfamiliar, when a lawyer takes a file on contingency, what it means is that they're not getting paid in advance, but they say, I will take a cut of whatever you make. And, they'll work out the terms of what happens if, the litigation falls apart and how big that cut will be and all of that. That's going to be in their, in their retainer agreement. But I have some questions about the, the conflict aspect here, because I think that this really kind of raises one. I'm concerned by that. So, as mentioned, this appears to be sort of that there's multiple purposes for this. To pick a fight, to market, to try to get more clients and more clients specifically to their firm as opposed to others. There might also be an element of marketing the firm and the lawyer themselves. Because this is getting a lot of attention and there's a lot of sort of political controversy around this. And so there might be people who decide, hey, I really like this guy, in part because they like what he is, they don't like Elon Musk. So that is its own sort of question. But yeah, I don't really know what to make of this because it's really unusual. And I think that the fiery wording of it is likely to make it less effective at its primary goal of pay the money, right? The primary goal of a demand letter is that the other side pay the money. Yeah, lots of people out there are celebrating this. They're saying this is the best thing they've ever read and so forth. And I don't know. It must have been fun to write. I'll certainly grant that. I mean, lots of lawyers would love to be able to write this kind of letter and send it out. I just don't know if it's a good idea, and I got some concerns. I'm also just going to note that it's also not the funniest bit of legal writing that's out there. because the funniest is a response where somebody gets a threat to, to sue, and the response was something along the lines of, "Dear sir, you should know that somebody out there is signing your name to stupid letters." That one is that one still has the top. Maybe I'll sort of discuss that one in another video, or maybe a short. All right, so thank you guys for watching. I just kind of thought this was interesting. As I mentioned, lots of people are going to be saying, well, what about the Twitter files? And I'm going to get to the Twitter files. I've got some thoughts on that and the legal implications of the Twitter files, because I think that this actually has some potential legal issues to it, not just, sort of social issues. So I will get to that, but I was already working on this and I thought I'd finish it. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to see more content. I also want to thank my $50 supporters, or my Patreon supporters, and at the $50 level, Canada's National Firearms Association, the CCFR, and the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. At the $30 level, Sights and Arms Limited and Jane Babe and Luxor. And at the $20 level, Mark, Kyle Fox, Haywire, Gerald to the Bailey, Dale Nesbitt, Cameron Johnson, Andrew Elsich, Vicky, and I'm going to give a shout out here to Forest River Outfitters as well. Thank you as well to everyone in the $10 crawl that'll be following. And thank you for watching. I hope this has armed you with knowledge.